We were never taught the neuroscience of what actually creates long-term joy, happiness, pleasure, and fulfillment.
Most people assume that they're going to fall into their dream relationship without developing the habits that require them or that are required to keep that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, Next Level Mastermind. We are in week number 36. We are going to talk about the top 10, or is it the top 10?
It's the top 10.
The top 10 things that we should have learned in school, but we didn't. You want to start?
Yeah, so again, I kind of created a frame prior to this, but basically, before Kevin and I even got together, I had a business called Alan Lazarus LLC, and it was basically to create an online educational brand that was predicated on the following statement: what you never learned in school, but desperately need to know. And desperately was usually capitalized or underlined in my logos because I think it's important to major in the major things. Like, what are the things that are actually going to make the biggest difference, right? So, for example, on here, and we won't go into this one first, but goal setting. Goal setting is a perfect example of, like, I didn't learn goal setting in school. To me, if you cannot set goals, there's no way you're going to be able to maximize your potential or your contribution. And that's so obvious to those of us who have been in personal development. But as kids, can you imagine if we were setting bigger goals? They've done studies about things like that where these fundamentals, the people who did them at a younger age and ignited the power of the compound effect from a young age, they're going to be just far more successful. But again, this is going to be a holistic approach. Okay, so school was designed for a very specific, to do your job and to do it well. And this is going to be a holistic approach of health, wealth, and love. You know that's what we're about. So these are what we consider the most important fundamentals that we wish we learned in school and that we wish were taught in school and that honestly are starting to finally be taught in school, which is really exciting.
Can I say something before you go?
Of course.
If you find yourself looking or hearing this, because you can't see it obviously, and thinking to yourself, that's something I know, ask yourself, the next question I want you to ask yourself is, how well am I doing that?
Right.
All right. Again, a lot of these are fundamentals, but how well are you actually executing and practicing these? Because knowledge without execution is just potential. So I want you to ask yourself that question here.
So I want to go a little deeper on that, Kev, if you don't mind. So don't make the mistake of thinking knowledge is power. As Kevin just mentioned, knowledge is potential power. Knowledge unused, right? It's like, here's a good example. There's $1 billion fitness industry, but yet we keep getting more and more and more obese, right? So it's knowledge is not the issue, it's conduct, it's behavior. So I don't want you to sit here and say in your head, like, I already know that. It's, am I doing that? Have I mastered that? And most importantly, would my results prove that I've mastered that? And that's really the frame here. Okay, so do you want to kickstart it?
You can kickstart it.
Okay. All right, so I said I wasn't going to start with goal setting, but I actually am going to. Okay, so goal setting. This is the one thing that we never learned in school that I think bothered me most because I think it's the most important. Again, the example that I use, when I was 23 years old, I drove across the country and I lived in LA for a time. If you walked outside my apartment and looked left, you saw the Hollywood sign and Sunset Boulevard. If you went right, you may or may not get mugged. It's just a weird area, right? The wealthiest people in the world living with the poorest. And it's odd. But the reason I tell you that story is that driving across the country was a trip. It was a journey. I remember we went through Columbus, Ohio. We went through all these different states. We took a picture at every sign entering a new state. And we also stopped in Vegas. We also went through Denver, Colorado, and the Rockies. That was amazing. So it was this epic journey, this 4.5 to 5 day journey. We really trucked it. And so I guess what I want you to say is that, or what I want you to realize is that a lot of people say that it's about the journey. And while I agree with that statement, I think we're missing a fundamental piece where the goal actually dictates much of the journey. In other words, driving from Boston to Worcester is a very different journey, a very different life in this analogy than Boston to LA. So what I want to really drive home here is that your goals, you make your goals, but then your goals make you. And so, like, for example, if you intend to be a multimillionaire, you're going to have to become far more than if you just intend to pay your bills. So again, it's going to be who you become and what you contribute. So what you want to make sure you do is you understand actually how to set goals. So this is my goal setting system. It's super simple. Long range, mid range, short range. So long range goals are anything that are 5 years plus, so 5 to 10 years, okay? Mid range is anything 2 to 3 years, and then short range is like this year, okay? And if you want to go even more granular, you can break it down into daily goals as well. But the key is to make sure that your decade goals roll down into your mid-range goals, which roll down into your short-term goals, which roll down into your day, right? So if you want to be, quote-unquote, the most successful podcaster in the personal development industry like Kevin and myself, we have to make sure that we have goals that are bringing us there. So what's the 10,000-foot staircase? And then you don't look up the 10,000-foot staircase every day and get all super overwhelmed. Instead, you look at that next step. But first, you have to set the staircase as well.
So when I'm on a podcast, so Alan and I are on a lot of other podcasts. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So Alan and I are fried. That's where we're mouthing down coffee here, like it's going out of style. So Alan and I are on a lot of other podcasts, and when I am on, people ask me about hyperconscious. They say, "What is hyperconscious? Where did it come from?" For me, I realized that I was living by accident, and I think a lot of people live by accident, which means they're not intentionally setting goals, right? So it's almost like. And we're going to talk about a lot of other things, so I don't want to like give anything away. But it's almost like people think that eventually things are just going to work out. I used to. I always tell this story. Me and my two friends decided that we were going to just be unreasonably wealthy somehow, and we were going to rent a Winnebago and drive across the country. We were going to have dirt bikes and four-wheelers and amazing girlfriends and all these things, right? That was the vision. We never set goals on how to get that. That was never, it was never a plan. We just assumed it was going to work out. I think a lot of people do that when it comes to health, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to love. I think most people are waiting for something else to happen. Mm-hmm. How many people do you know in your life right now who are waiting for New Year's or their birthday or for this to happen or for that to happen, right? They're waiting on something so they can set a goal. And honestly, are they even going to set that goal when that thing comes? Probably not. Alan and I always do our yearly New Year's resolution episode where it's like, that's when most people set goals. But the problem is, if you really wanted that goal, you would have already set it and you'd be chasing it by now, right? So my question to you is, how intentional are you actually living? Again, a lot of these are fundamentals, but Alan and I are as guilty as anybody in terms of forgetting a fundamental, or just the law of familiarity creeps in and you forget what you should be doing.
Aristotle said we need to be, or no, Socrates?
I believe it was Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan said once, you need to be reminded more than you need to be taught. And these, again, are fundamentals, but we want to bring them to the forefront. I think that's one of the really cool things about reading books is it brings the important stuff back to the forefront. That's why I reread The Compound Effect so often. I'm actually rereading it now. I was listening to it earlier today. One more thing I want to say quickly about goal setting is Kevin just mentioned that lifestyle, right? What was it, like having a Winnebago with just four-wheelers,
just driving
hot
all over
girlfriends
the
and all that
country.
stuff.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that those are all lifestyle goals. What if they actually decided to start a business and have a big goal where the byproduct of that business would be that lifestyle, right? And so I think that that's the important piece with goal setting. You don't just set the goal to get the goal. You set the goal where the byproduct of that goal is the lifestyle you want. So for example, if you want to buy a $100,000 car, you need to set a business goal way above that so that the $100,000 car is a byproduct of it. And I think that's another fundamentally misunderstood thing. If I wanted to go and enjoy the Rockies, it's interesting. It's like that travel was purposeful. I wanted to work in show business. I wanted to work in Hollywood. I didn't just drive to LA just to aimlessly wander. I drove to LA for a purpose. So me exploring the Rockies had meaning. That's why you set a goal, not just to get the goal, but for the journey it will force you to embark upon. And now not only does the journey have more meaning, but you'll actually get farther than you ever would have if you just decided to go to Worcester or whatever small goal you've set.
Worcester.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Please.
Okay. How many goals do you guys typically set for yourself, and do they ever change?
Interesting. They always change.
Yeah.
Right?
They get bigger. Do you want to go first?
No, you can hammer it.
All right. So we always have a priority goal. So on my purpose macro flashcard, I have a true north in the upper left, and then what's the main goal? For a long time, it was 1 million listens. And then for at least a year and a half, it was 5 million listens, and now it's 50 million listens. So the goal changed, but the true north didn't. So the main goal is impact, and listens is how we have the biggest impact. And so the goal has amplified and gotten bigger as we have. And I think that I remember hearing this recently. I think it was Darren who said this. He basically said that, one person's goal is to pay their bills. Elon Musk's goal is to colonize Mars. They both are challenging. It's what challenge do you choose? And both of them actually require a lot of your life force. Sometimes paying your bills is really hard. But if you're trying to colonize Mars, yes, that's going to be a lot harder. But think of the lifestyle that he's able to have that we're not able to have. So it's almost like if you set small goals, you'll stay small. And so if you want to really grow and contribute, you're going to have to amplify your goals. So to answer the original question, though, there's one true north goal that is the most indicative of my purpose prayer. And then there's other goals underneath that are process goals, but there's usually only one priority sort of results goal, if that makes sense. So right now, health, wealth, and love. I have a goal weight of 185. I have 50 million listens for the podcast. And then like my love goals is number of fun, unique experiences with Emilia. I track that critical number.
Fire answer. That's better than my answer.
Oh,
I write down like a bunch of goals every day. I think if you're having trouble setting your long-term goals, then you need to try to focus there. If you're having trouble setting your short-term goals, you need to focus there. I think that's one thing that Alan and I really help each other with, is like Alan's always been really good at the long-term, and I've always been pretty good at knocking down the short-term dominoes. So as a business, like we set a goal today to double our monthly income. Like that's a goal. Mm-hmm. We both have our listen goals, but I also have my personal goals of like, For me, it's mostly like quantum journaling stuff, like being the best man, being the best husband. I talked about that in the Law of Attraction one.
There's 4 different types of goals, and this is turning into a goal training. We have manifest in big letters behind the camera right here, and it says 25,000 downloads in October. It says 20,000 monthly income for Next Level University, and then it says 10,000 monthly income for Podstrong. So those were Kevin's goals before we created Next Level Podcast Solutions.
Need to update them.
But that's the thing, right? We need to update them. So how often do you check in with your goals? We obviously haven't in a little while. To make this practical for everyone listening, there's 4 different types of goals. There's results goals. There's process goals. There's philanthropic goals, and then there's growth goals. So growth goal might be I want to get better at podcasting. A results goal is I want 5 million listens at Next Level University. A process goal is I want to do 500 episodes. And a philanthropic goal is we want to start a charity where we help underprivileged kids. Okay, so those are 4 types of goals, and you want to have them under each of that bucket. And the very last thing that I'll say here, I was just thinking about it. What was it? Just remember that if you don't have big goals, it's affecting you. In other words, and I think one of the reasons people don't set goals is they're scared. They want to be able to, it's a lot of pressure, right? If you want to get 50 million listens, you can't just wake up in the morning and wing it. It's a lot of pressure. And so I would say don't let the fear of the pressure stop you from setting big goals, because I think you're going to find yourself far more fulfilled when you're maximizing your potential and contribution. And I just think more people should be setting bigger goals. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. What 3 goals would make 2021 the best year of your life? Set them now. Don't wait till New Year's. But what 3 goals, if you achieved these 3 things, it would make it the best year of your life? Start there and hone and focus on those. And then a lot of the other stuff will happen as a byproduct.
Fire.
Cool.
So this is the one I'm going to speak about. I'm actually, in a weird way, glad I didn't learn about in school, because if I did, I don't know that I would be in the situation I am today. So the love languages. You guys have heard us talk about this. You've heard us talk about our relationship check-ins and all of that stuff. The 5 Love Languages is a book by Gary Chapman. So you have quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, and acts of service. Okay? I never knew that until like 2 years ago.
Same.
We were not taught anything about relationships. We were not taught anything about like understanding a partner, effective communication. There just wasn't any of that. And again, going back to goal setting, and this is something I've seen so much in my life. Most people assume that they're going to fall into their dream relationship without developing the habits that require them, or that are required to keep that. Like imagine that. You assume that somebody's just going to fall into your life. Now they might, but what are the chances you're able to keep that and sustain that? You could literally have somebody give you $1 million. If you don't have $1 million habits, it's not going to stick around for very long, right? I think one of the issues is that a lot of the people that we learn from didn't necessarily have this information. I don't even know if the book was out at that point, really, but I do think it should be taught in schools. Again, most of us are probably already in a relationship or we want to be in one. It's unreasonably important to learn love languages because you might actually be speaking to somebody in a completely different language. And I think that it probably is one of the reasons why divorce is so high.
Oh, for sure.
Miscommunication.
Again, the love languages are acts of service, gift giving, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. Emilia and I recently were talking, and we think there's other ones that are in addition. Not to hate on Gary Chapman, obviously, but I think deep talks, deep conversations is one of them. I feel like most of my relationships revolve around that. And then the other one was, supporting one's dreams. That's definitely a love language of mine, like unsolicited supporting of one's dreams and goals. And then food. I think food could be a gift, but I think food is kind of a love language too, sharing food together.
And we were talking, Mark Metry was in the studio, and we were talking no, he wasn't in the studio, he was virtual. But we were talking about the 6 basic human needs too. Like love languages, and then the 6 basic human needs by Tony Robbins, one of his TED Talks. You have certainty, variety, loving connection, growth, contribution. Hold on. Significance.
Strong word?
Yes. So I think that the deep talks are growth, and then the support
of your goals
is significance and contribution.
Yeah, contribution for sure.
So
you're contributing to someone else's goals.
Yeah. Imagine if you understood that. Like, okay, how about this? Should everybody be an entrepreneur? Maybe not if certainty is your most important need. Like if your deepest need is to be certain, entrepreneurial life might not be for you because it's very uncertain, right? If growth and contribution are your 2 highest, your relationship is going to be different because you're probably going to want to be with somebody who wants to grow and contribute. So it's like these frameworks that if we understood or we were taught, I genuinely believe it would have shaped our lives completely different.
So this is a big one. You've probably heard me talk about this before. Happiness versus fulfillment. I usually frame this with a quick story. So we've all heard that John Lennon thing where he was in class and the teacher said, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, happy. And the teacher said, you didn't understand the assignment. And then John Lennon said, you don't understand life. So John Lennon is basically implying that happiness is the goal. What I think is interesting is that I don't know if we were ever taught what happiness actually is. I honestly don't believe we were. With all the neuroscience that I've studied, I think that happiness is a poor substitute for what really makes a human being fulfilled, happy, and joyous long term. So there's a new framework that I kind of co-created with Kev, which is basically joy, happiness, fulfillment. Joy, pleasure, fulfillment. Let's do that because I don't like the word happiness. I think happiness is kind of all of this. Joy is when you're in the present moment enjoying what you're doing. So right now I'm enjoying myself, so I'm in joy, okay? Pleasure is if-then. If I eat this Oreo, then I'll get a dopamine hit, then I'll be happy. But it's fleeting, it's pleasure, okay? And you've probably heard me say often on the podcast, where are you chasing pleasure at the expense of fulfillment? Because fulfillment, the third one that matters most, in my opinion, only comes from 2 things. When you are growing and maximizing your own potential in alignment with your highest self, and when you're contributing beyond yourself. So right now, I'm enjoying what I'm doing in the moment, joy. I'm having pleasure, assuming that this is going well. If it's going well, then I'll be happy. If it doesn't go well, then I won't. Okay, but I am going to be fulfilled because even if it doesn't go well, I will grow and I will be able to contribute even more because of that growth when I review this. And so I think that we play a losing game when we say we want happiness, but we don't know what that actually means. If you think happiness and pleasure are synonymous, aka they're the same, you're going to eat Oreos. That's never going to fulfill you. Again, I use Oreos, but it could be going to the club. It can be external validation. It can be Netflix. None of us are ever going to feel fulfilled from Netflix. Why? Because it's not helping us grow and it's not helping us contribute, unless you're watching a documentary, in which case, that's different. But this is a thing that we were never taught in school. We were never taught the neuroscience of what actually creates long-term joy, happiness, pleasure and fulfillment. And I think the idea, and Jim Rohn says this, he says the point of life is to amplify both the frequency and the intensity of wonderful experiences. But I don't think we were ever really taught what our own unique version of wonderful experiences is. I guarantee you, me being alone in the studio, working for 8 hours straight with no interruptions, I'm genuinely fulfilled by that. If that's not you, that's okay. But we all need to understand ourselves and what actually fulfills us if we want to win at this game called life.
It's safe to... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there's a question.
Hammer it.
Can you speak on how you can find fulfillment when you slip under the pressure to pick a major, get a degree, maybe get another degree, and then find a job in your field, or if you even agree with what society says we should do?
My goodness. Deep question. Great question. I'm going to let you hammer that first because you have more experience when it comes to getting degrees than I do.
So the question, I believe, said, when you do stay in alignment with what society deems, can you read it one more time, Amy, please?
Yeah. Can you speak on how you can find fulfillment when you slip under the pressure to pick a major, get a degree, maybe get another degree, and then find a job in your field, or if you even agree with what society says we should do?
I don't agree that society knows what's best for you. I believe that fulfillment is an inner game, and that only you can genuinely. There's a good example. Like, I genuinely feel unbelievably fulfilled when I spend 8 hours alone in the studio hammering my work. So that might not be the way. I literally have the blinds down. I don't want any sunlight. Like, I'm weird. That's okay. It's my own unique flavor of weird. So first and foremost, I think that it's really unfortunate that we aren't taught to self-actualize our own inner compass from a young age. I know that I was told, you're good at math, you should be an engineer because engineers make a lot of money and you'll have choices. I am grateful that my mom taught me to aim high, because when you aim high, like I said, you'll have choices. And fortunately, I made so much money early on that I could leave and chase my dreams. But when I got in that car accident at 26, it taught me a very, very valuable lesson, which is that doing what other people thought I should do is a losing game. I think that you have to look inside and figure out what you want out of your life, and that's a lot of what we help people with at Next Level You. But you also do have to have the practicality of, like, what does the marketplace actually need? So to answer that question, to really try to help this person whoever asked, I want you to figure out, what do you really love to do? Okay, write that down. All the things you love to do. What does the marketplace, aka the economy, actually need desperately? What do they really need? And then, what am I really good at? I want you to find the center of those three things. That's where you belong. That's your genius zone. And I think that if you can figure out something that fulfills you that also makes a lot of money and creates the lifestyle, that's where you're going to really find the gold.
Yeah, I second it. I second what Alan said. In a weird way, I don't think anybody in the world can tell you what fulfills you. How would they know? They haven't lived your unique life. They haven't had the experiences that you've had. So I think at the end of the day, it's usually the stuff that we want to do that fulfills us the most. And I don't know, this is probably a blanket statement, but it's usually the stuff that people are most afraid to do. Like, it's the stuff that you're most afraid to get judged for. How many people were afraid to post about their business on social media? I was afraid to tell people about the podcast. I know Alan was afraid to get flack from people, right? Like, I know a lot of people are afraid. It's like, what do you take the most personally? And what are you afraid that people are going to find out and make fun of you for? I bet you that's probably like a pretty good line into what would fulfill you, because it's close to your heart, right? Like, somebody could come to me and say, like, hey, you're terrible at grocery shopping. I don't care. I really don't care. But if somebody, stayed after and said, hey, Kevin, I don't think that was your best today, that would hurt me really badly, because this is what fulfills me. This is my purpose. This is my passion. This is my mission. So I would second what Alan said, for sure.
Thank you, brother.
Indeed. Also, real quick, you got to stop trash talking Oreos.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, because we're not going to get a sponsorship. We already lost Netflix. We're not gonna
I use it because I ate some Oreos last night.
Did you?
Yeah,
Double
full
stuff?
disclosure.
Double
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of
70
that,
calories per.
Calories in versus calories out. Fitness. Okay. Calories in versus calories out is the basic fundamental when it comes to weight loss. Now, I'm not talking about overall health. I'm not saying you should eat ice cream every night and that's healthy and or sustainable.
Or Oreos.
But as Alan mentioned, this is something that, like, is not super hard the discipline part of it is hard, right? But at the end of the day, I want you to think of this. If you lose weight at 2,000 calories, you can eat 2,000 calories worth of ice cream, and the odds are 99.99% of the time you will lose weight. Now, obviously, there's hormones, and there's food allergies, and there's all sorts of stuff that's, that might shift this. But as a general rule of thumb, that's just the way it works. If you maintain at 2,000 calories and you eat 2,500 calories of chicken, you're going to gain weight, right? Like Alan and I have been doing this for a long time. All of my close friends have been into bodybuilding and weightlifting and all of that stuff. Like, this is across the board. I've seen this work with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. People have built careers off of coaching others this way. I think it's probably the discipline thing, but we were never taught about exercise. We were never taught about metabolism. We were never taught about how to eat. We were never taught about how to actually achieve a physique. Like, that was never it. Gym class was dodgeball. Like, pick on the people who didn't know how to throw the ball hard. That was it. At the end of the day, and I genuinely believe this because I've been doing this for 16 years or however. I'm 31, so probably 15 years. I was doing
Are you 32?
I don't know. No, I'm 31.
Oh,
You're
that's right.
32.
I'm 32.
I was doing this before if it fits your macros was a thing, just because intuitively it made sense to me. Okay, and you might look at me and say well, yeah, but you're in shape or you have good genetics or whatever it may be. It's because I've been doing this for a long time. I didn't always look like this, and I didn't always know this, and I wasn't always able to eat pizza and lose weight. But if I was tracking that pizza, I probably could. Again, I'm not saying this is a law or science. I'm not a doctor. I don't do personal training anymore. But as a theory, as a practice, from my experience and what I've seen, and I know Alan would second this, at the end of the day, if you want to lose weight, you need to eat less calories than you need. And it doesn't have to be chicken, broccoli, and rice. I did a bodybuilding show. I prepped for 12 weeks. I ate eggs, chicken, broccoli, and rice, cream of wheat, protein powder, and that was pretty much it. And it was brutal. It was terrible. My best friend, Matt, did a bodybuilding prep and ate whatever he wanted. And he looked just as good as I did. And he won a show, too. So that's just proof. You can kind of eat whatever you want as long as you're eating under what you need. And make sure you're getting healthy stuff, obviously.
When he said he ate whatever he wanted, he meant within the caloric.
Yes.
So if you burn 2,000 calories in a day and you eat 2,500, you're going to gain weight. If you burn 2,000 calories in a day and you eat only 1,500, you're going to lose weight. That is just science. The calories are just a unit of energy. A calorie is a unit of energy, and that's why it's created that way, is because it helps people understand what their actual energy in versus energy out
This is why Weight Watchers works.
Right.
This is why the Atkins diet. This is why the South Beach diet. All they're doing is counting the calories so you don't have to.
Right.
If a meal says 5, it probably has 500 calories or whatever, however they figure that out.
Right.
That's the way it works. I've had so many people come to me and say, well, that doesn't work for me. Are you measuring your food? Are you measuring your food right? Do you have a food scale? You know what I mean? You 32 grams of peanut butter is a serving size, 190 calories. If you were to do 42 grams, that's going to be more calories. So you have to weigh this out. It's like anything else. You got to track it, just like you track your finances, like you track your weight. You got me fired up over here. My sock's falling off.
Got to. I remember one of my early fitness clients, she was weighing the chicken with the bones in it.
That'll do it.
And we found out that it wasn't that she wasn't tracking, it's that she wasn't tracking right. And again, it's an iterative process, but calories in versus calories out. We didn't learn anything about nutrition, right? We use money every day of our life. We hang out with people every day of our life. We interact with people every day of our life. We eat food every day of our life. And in school, we didn't learn anything about money, not much about people and humans, and nothing about nutrition. It's just frustrating. It's really frustrating to know that the fundamentals of life weren't taught, but we're using that frustration to teach awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so money. So calories, what Kevin just described about calories actually applies to money as well. So calories is to cash flow as cash flow is to calories. So, for example, if you make $2,000 a month, but you spend $2,500, you are in a deficit, you are going into debt. Okay, that's the losing game. Don't do that. If you are making $2,000 a month and you only spend $1,500 and then you invest the other $500, you're actually gaining a surplus. That's how you become wealthy over time. And we're not going to go into all the different ways you can invest money, but the 3 things that matter about money, even though we weren't taught this in school, I remember I was in my MBA, my Master's in Business Administration, and I remember learning about entrepreneurship and finance, and I was like, how is it that I'm 20 years old in a Master's in Business Administration, and for the first time in my life, I'm learning about money? Like, what is that? That is broken, right? I spent $250,000 on my education. Fortunately, the financial aid helped me a lot, scholarships, all that kind of stuff. But it's like we are taught to spend money, but we're not taught how to invest money, right? It's very broken. So here's the 3 things I'll tell you. How much money do you make? And you need to learn how to figure out how to make more of it, which is based on 3 things. How valuable are you to the marketplace? How good are you at what you do? And how hard would it be to replace you? Okay, so number 1, how do you make more money? Number 2, how well do you do at saving money, aka not spending money, and minimizing your expenses? Okay, that's a skill. So the first skill is how do you make more money? Second is how do you minimize expenses? Third, where do you put it? Are you buying cheeseburgers and shoes and cars and clothes, things that depreciate in value? Or are you investing it in stocks and books and personal development courses and, a home that will be a rental property eventually, right? So number 1, how do you make more money? Number 2, how do you limit your expenses and not spend money on useless things? And then number 3, how do you invest that money into things that make you more money? And by the way, investing it in yourself, those skills will always create the biggest ROI.
I don't remember the stat. This came out a while ago, but it was something along the lines of maybe 75 or 80% of Americans, if they got hit with a $600 bill, that would depreciate their entire savings. Something. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it really opened my eyes to like, wow, there's not a lot of financial mastery when it comes to people. And I think another thing too is like, I think that if we learned that money is not a bad thing,
right?
So many people I know think money is a bad thing, and people who have money are bad people. Are there some people that have a lot of money that are bad? Of course.
For sure.
But there's a lot of people who have a lot of money who are really good.
And there's a lot of people who don't have a lot of money that are bad.
True.
As well.
True.
It's not, money's not the issue, it's the wielder.
I think that would help if I knew that money. But also, money doesn't buy happiness, too. We know.
Right.
We've talked about that. Right. All right. So, for most of my life, I thought I was stupid because I wasn't very good at taking tests. Like, I remember getting, like, 60s on my math tests pretty regularly. I was never really good at math. I used to have to cheat off the kid next to me. But, no, it wasn't you. I wish it was you. I would have passed with flying colors. Nobody in school ever really talked to me about the importance of failing. Like in school, if you fail, that's it. You pass your test in, you got an F, and I'll try again next time. Hopefully you pass this class. But what if they turn that into a positive experience? Like what if they gave you the test back and said, okay, this is what you got. Tell me why you chose these answers that were wrong. And they walked you through the process of, eliminating and then understanding at a deeper level. I think so many kids, and again, we've talked about imagination and why kids lose their imagination. I think this is one of the big reasons why. Because you get a big fat red F on your test and you're quote unquote not smart enough. Right? Like imagine if you had a teacher who cared so much, and again, teachers have a lot on their plate, so this is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. But they took you through the test and said, why'd you pick this answer? Oh, for that reason. Okay, let me reframe that for you. And I think understanding at a deep level that failure is not final. Failure is actually the key to success. I put a post up the other day. The people who are the most successful in the world have failed way more than you and I. Like way more. McDonald's was a failure. Disney World was a failure. The light bulb was a failure. KFC, to all our chicken friends out there, was a failure. All the big things that you see were failures probably along the way. We just see them because they kept going. The people who didn't succeed probably stopped along the way.
The thing any other questions, by the way, Amy? Just want to ask.
No, not yet.
Okay. The way I explain failing forward, it's interesting because the best way I can explain this is I remember talking to Tim Grover, which was Michael Jordan's personal trainer, and reading his book Relentless. And I'll never forget when I first learned that Michael Jordan per time on the floor in the NBA actually missed more shots than anyone else. And I found that so fascinating. The best basketball player in the history of the game per time on the floor missed more shots than anyone else, but he also failed forward more than anyone else. He, that Nike commercial again, I failed, and I failed again. That's why I succeeded. It really is interesting how Richard Branson has outfailed everyone in this room by far. Virgin Cola, he has had so many doozies where he just failed miserably, but he also succeeded. Mark Cuban says you only have to succeed once. You can fail as many times as you want, but you can succeed once, and then everyone remembers you as a success. The thing is, they didn't let it define them, right? The kid who got big Fs and then said, I'm a failure, that's very different than the kid who said, oh, I can work harder next time. And that brings us to growth mindset, which Kevin's going to talk about soon. I won't take that one from you.
No, you better not. I'm going to throw a fit up in here.
We're going on the success side of things over here. So I'm going to talk to you about two things that I desperately wish we learned in school, assuming there are no questions. So I'm going to use my hands for this one because this is called the bow tie, and I really wish we learned this in school because if we understood this, we wouldn't quit so early in a journey. Okay, so the bow tie. I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my ability. So imagine I have a bow tie on. If you're on YouTube, you can see that. Or live, all of you hopefully can see me if you're not in the car or on your phone. Okay, so if I'm wearing a bow tie, I want you to imagine there's a graph, and there's a y-axis and an x-axis. On the y-axis is results, and on the x-axis is nope, I'm reframing.
Reframe.
Okay. One is an arrow from the bottom left of the page to the upper right of the page. Okay? One is an arrow from the upper left of the page to the bottom right of the page. Okay? And it's shaped like a bow tie. I want you to think of the first arrow from the bottom left to the upper right. This is results out. Results out. The one from the upper left to the bottom right is effort in. Okay, this is the bow tie. At the beginning of any journey, especially in entrepreneurship and business, the level of effort in needs to be a 10, and you get 0 return. When you first start a podcast, you're going to put max effort in because you've never podcasted before. It's going to take emotional, physical, mental strain and struggle for a 0 ROI. You're not going to make any money. Okay? But that 10-0 eventually becomes 9-1, 8-2, 7-3, 6-4, 6-4, 5-5. Now you're at the center of the bow tie. Now the level of effort in is actually getting you results. Holy crap. My effort in is actually returning a return? Wow. It flips. It's called the consistency flip. Now all of a sudden it goes the other way. And eventually, when you're Joe Rogan in podcasting, in this analogy, you have a level 1 effort in for 9 back. Eventually it's 0 and 10. Joe Rogan can never podcast for the rest of his life and crush all of us at the beginning of our journey. Why? Because he's been doing it for 17 years. And he never stopped. Now he can stop and win forever. This is the consistency flip. This is what I wish we learned. Why do we quit so often? Oh, I'm not good at tennis. I'm not good at video games. Podcasting's not for me. We don't understand. It's level 10 effort in for 0 results. We don't see Eminem in the trailer park rapping. We don't see Mark Cuban on the cardboard box in a broke office building. We don't see Jeff Bezos going to investors saying, please help me with start Amazon. And they say, what's the internet? The consistency flip. We see Jeff Bezos now with the most successful company in the history of the world. Okay, we're not seeing these people when they were broke and despondent, when they were at the beginning of the bow tie. Okay? At the beginning of real estate, podcasting, anything. You're terrible. You're new. It's okay. Do you get through that? Kevin and I are finally starting to flip the bow tie, and it's really nice. It's awesome. But I'll never forget the value that we were putting in level 10 effort for 4 listens a day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was tough. It was tough, but we got through it, and you can too.
Fire.
Thank you, man.
Do you want to talk about the compound effect?
Yeah, a little bit. Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course.
So the compound effect is that same type of thing. If you can stay consistent, eventually it snowballs, and it's an exponential growth curve. Okay, so the compound effect kind of goes with the bow tie. The compound effect basically means if you can stay consistent all along the way, eventually the returns exponentially increase, right? So 1% listener growth right now for us is, we calculated this earlier, what, 6,000 listens or something like that? Or no, 3,000 listens.
Yeah.
3,000 listens. Because we just surpassed 300,000. I think we're at 307. So 1% growth is 3,000 listens, which is however many new listeners. At the beginning, it would have been 1 or 2 listens, right? So it feels small. Focus on the consistency. Don't focus on the results, especially at first.
And there's a reason why we always say, like, there's a reason we say we've never missed an episode. There's a reason we talk about we'll never miss a mastermind. Like, we'll show up consistently because that is one of our superpowers, and that's one of the reasons why we're where we are today, right? Like, eventually, if we keep going long enough, we will be successful, right? We're already successful to our terms because we love what we're doing. But by outside standards and the perception of people, we'll be successful. We will have just done it longer and more than other people. Like 500 episodes is a lot. Most people don't get there. But once we get to 1,000, once we get to 1,500, 2,000, you're in like the, 0.000000001% of podcasters. Most people don't make it past 50. So getting there is, that's when the real fun starts.
I know we got a time constraint.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I think it's
we're in-
important.
we're in trouble.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
There's one more thing I want to say about this. So Kevin's, I've got this calculated because we go on other shows as well. He's been in front of that microphone for...
Alan.
Yep.
Sorry, there's a question.
Oh, awesome.
Hammer it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's rock.
We see people's final
Talking
destination.
about me,
We
so
don't
it's like-
see their journey and everything they had to do to reach their goal. What is the best way to push the hardships of the journey? To push through the hardships of the journey.
I'm gonna steal Alan's. This is what Alan would say. Listen to or read books of people who have gone through most likely way worse than what you're going through, and understand that if they did it, you can too. That's one. I think number 2 is check in with your why. Like, why did you start this in the first place? If you really, really want to be extraordinary, you are going to have to overcome a lot of things that, people that aren't shooting for the same target won't have to. They might not understand it, but I think on the other side of overwhelm, on the other side of uncertainty, on the other side of painful growth is the person that you want to be. And I think on the other side of the person that you want to be is the life that you want.
Fire, brother.
I appreciate that.
Amy, just to make sure that I hit the nail on the head on the question, can you please read it one more time?
Language of origin, please.
Yeah. So we see people's final destination. We don't see their journey and everything they had to do to reach their goal. What's the best way to push through the hardships of the journey?
I think you have to have a reverence for the underdog. I feel like you have to, it's almost like you have to, 2 things. And there's a lot of ways I could go with this, but I want to give you as much value as I can in a short amount of time because we got a time constraint. Number 1, I want you to have reverence for Jeff Bezos in 1994 when people were literally saying, what's the internet? I want you to value that. I want you to value Jeff Bezos back then. Almost more than you do now, in a weird way. Eminem in the trailer park writing raps. I want you to have reverence for that. Almost to a fault. That's a little hardcore, but it's what I really believe. You kind of have to. And like Tom Brady, before Bledsoe got injured and he got his chance, he was still working just as hard back then. That's why when opportunity struck, he crushed it. Okay? But no one knew him back then. He was working just as hard before anyone knew him as before. So if you're doing it for external results, you will lose. You got to do it for the mastery. And then when opportunity strikes, you'll be able to have a chance to show it off. That's number 1. Number 2, how do you push through the hardships? You have to realize, like Kevin said, you have to have the awareness that almost no one gets lucky. It just, I can literally look at almost anyone that I've studied, and there was at least 5 years of like hardship first before they quote unquote hit it big. John Maxwell's 8th book was successful. I've written 0 books. His 8th book was like reasonably successful. He says the first 7 my mom bought. You got to have reverence for that. You have to be aware of it too. You know, the light bulb, right? It's like Thomas Edison. It's a corny example, but it's true. I want you to be so committed and to have so much self-belief. You have to believe and have faith that what you see in your heart, eventually the whole world will see. And that's, I don't know if you can teach that. It's just grit. It's like you have to just like be willing to be called a loser for such a long time. I used to get way more respect back in corporate when I was making all that money. Now I'm finally starting to get back there. But for a long time, I was considered quite a loser. genuinely.
I always loved you.
I appreciate you, brother. It was hard, and I don't want to pretend to anyone that it's not going to be brutal. I was landscaping. I had an MBA and an electrical and computer engineering degree. I made almost $200,000 a year when I was 22, 23. And I was landscaping on the side for 4 hours in the hot sun for a friend's mom for $100 to pay my bills, living with my mom. When I'm super successful and the world finally sees that, I'll get to tell that story. And I didn't go get a job, which, by the way, I got offered $250,000 to be VP of sales for a technology company back then. So I had to say no to that to stay true to my mission. I honestly, there's something weird about me with that. You know, very few people would keep grinding and being called a loser when they had that kind of opportunity to go get that much external validation. But I was all in. And I think the car accident made me realize that other road wasn't for me. So hopefully that was helpful.
That was helpful. Anything else, Amy?
Yeah.
I saw something come through. I can see it with my eyes. My peepers peep something.
Yeah. So there's like this whole thing. So I'm just going to read the entire thing. Huge fan of what you guys are doing and building. The number of knowledge bombs per minute are way up there. I'm all about the persistent, consistent pursuit like you guys, and sometimes wonder in my endeavors in balancing the never give up and push through at all costs versus recognizing when it might be time for a pivot, taking the lessons learned to a new life direction /startup/business. How do you guys address this balance?
Interesting. Again, I think just to touch on what Alan was saying earlier, the pivot is just a different way to get to the same destination for at least for us, right? Like I write 500 million downloads every day. Like that's what I'm playing for, at least 1 billion lives. How that will change. Great example. 37 weeks ago? When did we start this?
Yeah, 36.
36 weeks ago, I had never used Zoom in my entire life. I had no idea what Zoom was. I didn't have a webcam, okay? But when I found out that we couldn't be in person anymore, it was like, how do we pivot? How do we pivot? That has actually served us incredibly because now we have this awesome setup with a really nice camera on top of a 50-inch TV, and we can do these masterminds and repurpose them, okay? So I think the pivot is the fun. I think the pivot is like, how do we get creative and make this... Our ability to turn a loss into a win is something that I don't know that we could explain because there's been so many losses behind the scenes.
Oh, man.
I think as long as your pivot is leading you towards what you want, I think that's super important. Like, yeah, maybe it might take a little bit longer. It's going to be a different road, but that's not really what it's about because you're still making progress. And then in terms of knowing when to push through and pivot, again, I think you've got to try to see what that push through actually looks like. Like, it's going to be personal and it's going to be specific to the thing, but like, I would say try a bunch of different things and see what lands. COVID has made us try so many new things. And honestly, a lot of them are really, really positive. Like, a lot of them are really, really positive. Would we have ever pivoted on purpose? I don't know, but I'm glad we had to.
Strong work,
And
man.
thank you for the love, too. Thank you for all the love. We appreciate you.
Yeah, that was an awesome question. Very in-depth. And I really appreciate these questions. I really like that we're going off script here and doing the interactive thing. I want to try to give a valuable answer here. I would say there's a lot of ways we could go, but fulfillment jumps off the page. I think genius zone and fulfillment. So it's interesting, and I'll just tell a brief story here. Growing up, I wanted to be an engineer, as you all know, and one of my best friend's father, who was one of the only father figures in my life at that time, kept saying, like, you're going to end up in sales. Like, you're going to end up in sales. And Alan, by the way, that's where all the money is anyway. You're going to end up in sales. And I was like, no, I'm going to be an engineer, right? I love math. And go figure, I went into engineering school. I eventually was behind a desk designing circuits, and I didn't want to do that anymore, and I loved people. That's one thing that's a theme for me. I just love and believe in people so effing deeply. And so I always was drawn to people and helping people. And so I think to answer your question, you have to understand your genius zone. In other words, you're so good at this thing that you don't even know you're good at it because it's always been there. It's almost like you take it for granted. Like, for me, business development, understanding people, influence, sales, I really do think that I kind of take it for granted. And it's not until I see other people try to sell, especially people who are early entrepreneurs as emotionally driven people, it's like really hard for them. And for me, they could spend their whole life trying to get as good as I am at that. here's what I'll tell you. The people who are the most successful are the people who find their genius zone and stay there the earliest. So I don't want you to freak out and say, well, I haven't found mine, or should I not pivot because this is my genius zone? Again, it comes down to that framework of what do I love to do? What am I amazing at? And then what does the marketplace need? I think that you've got to keep finding and pivoting within the center of those three things. Again, what do I love to do? For me, I love people. I love helping people. I love influencing people. Okay, what does the marketplace need? They desperately need someone who understands business, who can transfer businesses online, podcasts online, all that. Okay, what do I really love to do? I love coaching, consulting, podcasting, speaking. So that's where I'm staying. For you, try to figure out and brain dump on a piece of paper, what do I love to do most in the world? What am I the best at? What if strangers came up and be like, wow, you are unbelievable at that? And then what does the marketplace actually need? What is there a need for? And then keep pivoting along the way within that sort of framework.
Strong work.
Thank you,
Fire
brother.
questions. Amy, we have more questions?
Hold on.
Kevin's peepers was peeping.
No, my peepers didn't peep.
No, it's just a comment. Unless
Okay.
you want me to read it out loud.
So we are going to hammer. We want to give Amy a couple minutes so she can talk to you guys at the end. All right. How should we do this? Should I just spitfire mine?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go quick.
One of the most
round.
important things that I wish we learned that we didn't, the importance of vulnerability. There's so much ego in school, like whether it's sports or who's dating this person or what this person did or the rumors or the gossip, whatever it is. I wish I understood the importance of vulnerability, especially as a man who is an athlete, as a man who was considered tough, as a man who had muscles, who was always like considered the kid that nobody wanted to fight. I wish I knew the importance of vulnerability to de-escalate situations and honestly humanize myself more. I think that definitely would have helped. Meditation and visualization and mental health. I think mental health is a really hot topic now, which is amazing. I think it's long overdue. But imagine if there was a class on meditation, on visualization, on mental health, on just spirituality as a whole, right? Not religion, but spirituality, understanding that there's more to life than what we can see. I think that would be super, super powerful. Caroline Zani. She is a teacher we interviewed.
Mama Z.
A couple times we interviewed her. She's actually bringing this to a school. Johanna, we interviewed her Sunday. She's doing a lot of amazing things with her students. So it is definitely trending in a positive direction. And then hyperconsciousness. Understanding that like your level of awareness, shout out to the past, your level of awareness is going to dictate a lot of the opportunities you get. It's going to dictate your relationships. It's going to dictate your understanding. It's going to dictate almost everything. Like, be curious and question why things are the way they are.
Question everything.
Amber,
All right, so you
20,
crushed it.
You got 20 seconds, man.
I got 20 seconds.
Make it last. Make it last.
I only have two more.
Okay, now you have 15 seconds.
All right, so the two that I had written down, one was alignment and one was identity, and they're actually very similar, so I'm going to say them in the same thing. Okay, so self-awareness is something we didn't really learn in school. I remember when Emilia and I first got together, she and I would talk about how, like, we didn't learn any of this in school. Like, why didn't we learn any of this in school? You know, we had the Hyperconscious podcast, which was all about awareness. She has the Y Power podcast, which is all about self-awareness, why you do, what makes you tick. I think that your identity, I'll land there. Your identity dictates so much of what you do and don't do, think and don't think, say and don't say, believe and don't believe. I have a quote in the corner of the studio that I shout out all the time, and the reason why I refuse to erase it no matter how bad Kevin wants me to is all behavior is belief-driven. We started this mastermind tonight with basically, listen, knowledge is not power. Conduct, behavior is power. Amy and I recently did an episode about your relationship to pain in Next Level Nation, one of the lives. And basically what I said is this. The number one most powerful part of the human condition is staying consistent with who we believe we are. So if we believe that we are, I'll use consistency as an example. Kevin and I pride ourselves almost to a point of ego on how consistent we are. You hear us talking about it all the time. When you know what someone prides themselves on, you know how to influence them. We will do anything we can, anything, to stay consistent with everything we do, because it's who we believe we are. My question for you is, who do you believe you are? And again, we didn't learn this in school. Listen to what you say, the words you use. Listen to what you do by watching what you do, observe what you do. Listen to your own thoughts. What are you thinking? What have you told yourself about yourself? Are you shy? Are you outgoing? Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? When was the last time you checked in with that? Your identity is what you say, think, do, and believe. Oh, there goes that.
Classic. It's time to go.
Your identity is what you say, think, do, and believe. And that is a loop that you're going to need to break out of if you want to reinvent yourself. And you're going to have to understand the loop you're in if you want to reinvent the loop.
Amy, play us out.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Next Level Nation. So I do lives with different members of the team, and we recently have 4 new members: Brandon, Jenna, Jen, and Alessandro.
Yeah.
So this week I will be going live with Jenna, Jen, and Brandon. So come with questions. It's going to kind of be more of like an introduction type of thing, so you guys get to know them a little bit better. And then next week's mastermind is going to be how to create a next level focus to accomplish your goals.
Ooh.
So make sure that you tune in, come to that one Monday at 6 p.m.
Fire.
Guardrails. That's what next Monday will be about. Like, how do you create the focus around your acorn? Around your thing. The acorn that's going to grow into a mighty oak. How do you create focus?
Like a squirrel.
Right.
Acorn. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We will see you on the podcast, obviously, but we will also hope to see you next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do not have fans. We have family, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for joining us.
Love you.
Talk to you soon.